Today we're watching a movie about a chosen one, an elderly mentor, a love interest, and a dark lord. That's right, today we're watching the movie of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. When the movie starts, it starts with an exposition dump of lore about the Slayer and who she is and what she does, which is unimportant because later on in the movie, they once again rehash the exposition dump of who the Slayer is and what she does, which means they didn't need to talk about it in the beginning. In the beginning, it should be just a scene with a casket, and in the casket is a vampire. They show the Slayer, who reaches her hand out, is handed by the mentor a weapon that she lifts up into the air. Then it match cuts to Buffy, who has her pom-poms up in the air, who's a cheerleader.
So after the time skip to present day, we get a scene of Buffy and the other cheerleaders doing a cheer number. And this cheer number lasts way too long, like a good 45-50 seconds, way too long. In between the dance number, we cut back and forth between dancing and close-ups of characters who do not matter to the overall plot at all. We get the mascot. We get a girl who, when I watched it, I assumed was Buffy's best friend. We get the bumbling PE teacher, and none of these characters matter in the slightest.
So after the cheer number, Buffy and her friends are out shopping together, and they tell Buffy that the coat she wants is so last year. And then Buffy, basically this whole entire time, it shows how Buffy is just one of the girls, and she makes it very clear to everyone else that she's just one of the girls. She's definitely like all the other girls in her opinion. So after the shopping, Buffy is at home, and you find out that her parents are completely irresponsible and neglectful parents. They don't show up for Buffy in any way. They're like getting ready to go on a vacation, and they're leaving her behind alone at her house with her boyfriend, and they don't seem to care.
And Buffy's boyfriend is sitting on the couch, and on the news you can hear that multiple people have been attacked, and they've had their blood drained, and they have puncture holes in their necks. And there's even a couple bodies missing from the local morgue, which is clearly setting up that there are vampires about.
So Buffy is having flashback nightmares of her past lives, which this means that we can tell that Buffy has had several generations where she's reborn, which means that the opening where they showed her past self didn't actually matter, but at the same time, I guess they're trying to show that there's multiple instead of just one past life. And Buffy, in these flashback nightmares, sees the Dark Lord, and he kills her character. Problem with this is that I feel like when it comes to seeing the big bad guy, they should have left him out, and they just should have had Pee Wee Herman be the big bad guy that they were trying to show off, and then the bad guy should show up later on to make him more scary and more mysterious, but instead they chose to show the big bad guy a little too early in my opinion.
The main vampire's coffin is all pimped out with crushed velvet and neon lights everywhere. I think there's even a fog machine somewhere.
So Donald Sutherland is in no rush to save anybody's lives. I mean, Benny is being murdered, and Donald pulls up in his car, stops, waits till Benny is basically dragged away, and then he gets out of his car and he saves Pike. Which, by the way, saved Pike means he just kidnaps him, and that's it pretty much. He picks him up and puts him in his car while he's unconscious.
Buffy and her cheer squad have just finished practicing, and after all the other cheerleaders leave, Donald is sitting there, creeping, waiting, and then he tries to lure Buffy away into a graveyard, all alone. I don't know what he was thinking.
Donald, when they're in the gymnasium, explains to Buffy that she is the chosen one, and that she has a mark, and then she says, "Ew, gross, that disgusting mole, I had that removed." Then after she says gross, Donald tells her that she is the Slayer, and that he tells her about her dreams of her past life, and tells her about some of her past lives, which matches up with some of her dreams, so she starts to believe him and goes with him to the graveyard.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh my gosh, well, you know my past. Yeah, I'll come with you to the graveyard, creepy weird man who was just stalking me. Dummy."
So while they're in the graveyard, we find out that Donald can't fight, which he's supposed to train the Slayer to fight, but all of his lifetimes have never thought, hey, I should learn how to fight so I can train somebody else to fight. Because, the best way to train somebody to fight is to not know anything about fighting yourself, right? Buffy ends up dusting a couple of vampires, and that's it. So Benny shows up at Pike's house where Pike is sleeping in his bed, and Benny is like tapping on the window. And Benny says, "Pike, I'm hungry. Let me eat your face."
And then Pike's like, "Whoa, man, you're floating. Go home."
So Buffy now knows that she's a vampire slayer, and Donald is trying to tell her that she needs to be training. And she's like, "No, I'm not gonna train." And then her and Donald get into a fight after he throws a knife at her head, and she catches the knife, and she's like, "I just want to be a normal girl. I'm a normal girl. I'm like all the other girls." And then Donald's like, "No, you're not." And then she punches him in the face, and punching him in the face is the motivation she needed. And we cut to the training montage. And the training montage, of course, contains the nice, beautiful shots of Buffy's Nike shoes.
I don't know. Maybe those weren't Nike shoes. Let's get a close zoom in. Yeah, those are Nike shoes.
Definitely Nike shoes.
Pike is a stoner. Pike has a goatee. Pike drives the mystery machine. All we're missing is a dog, and then Pike is Shaggy.
His dog is a vampire now. It's Benny.
Oh my gosh, his dog is Benny.
So whenever vampires are around, Buffy gets this sensation that tells her the vampire's around. That's right, her crampire senses are tingling. She gets the cramps when vampires show up, which is the dumbest way to know vampires are there, because you're now in pain, which makes you not feel like fighting. But whatever.
Shaggy's mystery machine has broken down, and there are 3 vampires surrounding his mystery machine. He eventually gets the mystery machine running, and he floors it, and he's pinned Pee Wee Herman to the front of his mystery machine. I don't know the character's name, we're just gonna call him Pee Wee. Like, one scene before this, Buffy was in the town, in the city, fighting a vampire. Just want to set this up. Pike is in the middle of nowhere, driving through the forest at like 60, 70 miles an hour, while Pee Wee is pinned to the front of his vehicle. Pike crashes the vehicle, which leads to Pee Wee's arm being ripped off as he's thrown from the vehicle. And then Pee Wee says, "You ruined my jacket. Kill him a lot."
Which is pretty funny. It was one of the few funny lines on the movie.
And then Pike starts trying to protect himself from the vampires, and all of a sudden, Buffy's there. How did she get there? I don't know. We didn't show them approaching the vehicle from behind. We didn't show them following Pike. How did she even know Pike was being hunted by vampires in the middle of the woods? It doesn't make sense, but whatever, okay.
I feel like what they should have done is Buffy is fighting the vampire in the alley. As she walks out of the alley, the car flies by. She and Donald jump in Donald's car, and they chase after the car because they can see him flying by with a vampire on the top of his car as he's trying, and then he tries to knock it off by driving into the woods after that. That makes a little more sense. Then the vampire gets knocked off, loses his arm, and tells his vampire friends to attack Pike. They didn't do that. And that way Buffy would actually naturally show up at the scene because she saw the vampire attacking Pike's van and was already in the location where the attack was happening. But that's not what they do. Instead, she just pops up out of nowhere, just like the vampires kind of just pop up out of nowhere sometimes.
Pee Wee failed to kill Pike, and since he failed to kill Pike, the Dark Lord is mad at him and he's lecturing him. "Oh, you left the fledgling vampires on their first hunt and Buffy killed them." They keep talking like Pike is important. They're like, "Oh, he was this close, I almost had him." And they talk about him like he's important, but he's also just another guy.
Yeah, he's not got any importance. He's not a special hunter.
He's not like a special hunter. He's not important in the slightest. In fact, they were going to kill and eat him, so why are they wording it like he's important?
So Buffy is at a basketball game because she's a cheerleader and she's there to cheer for the basketball team. One of the basketball players turns out to be a vampire. He runs off. Buffy chases after him. As she's chasing after him, she chases him into a theme park.
It's clear that on the motorcycle, Buffy is a dude.
Yeah,
they kept her in low lighting.
So the basketball player vampire has lured Buffy away. His other vampire friends show up. They're going to kill Buffy. Pike shows up. He's helping Buffy fight the vampires, and Buffy does a flip onto a vampire's head. Somehow, this vampire who is alive after her crotch hits his head, bam, he's dead. She lands on top of Pike, and her and Pike have a romantic moment. We don't see her ever actually kill that vampire, so apparently her crotch has the power of a large wooden spike, and it only touched the back of the dude's head.
So the basketball player vampire, I think the actor was having a hard time keeping the teeth in his mouth because he kept going. And he's like slurping a lot. I don't know, just thought that was weird. The vampire choreography, sometimes the vampires will just wait around to be killed. They're like, it's my turn to be stabbed by Buffy now. Time to wait.
After fighting the basketball vampire and the other vampires, the other lowly vampires, Buffy ends up face to face with the Dark Lord, who hypnotizes her, and because she's hypnotized, Donald tries to kill the vampire, the Dark Lord, and he is killed. That's right, Donald's got zero fighting power or fighting skill because he never bothered training, and he gets himself killed. Oh, and this whole time he was supposed to not get involved with the fighting anyways, but at least if he knew how to fight, he could have better trained Buffy to fight.
After Donald dies, R.I.P. Donald, Buffy decides she's no longer the vampire slayer. She just wants to be a regular girl. Again, she decides this again that she wants to be a regular girl. And Donald's not there to be punched in the face to give her the inspiration to kill vampires. Yeah, she decides to go to the school dance, and Pike's like, whoa, man, uncool. You're just gonna let people die? And then he shaves his goatee and he decides, I'm gonna go to the dance. But not before sharpening a bunch of stakes to take to the dance with him.
Yeah, one of which is like a ruler, a wooden ruler.
There's like a ruler, like a scrubbing brush.
Yeah.
And Buffy uses the aforementioned ruler to stab Pee-wee in the chest, and then he takes like 30 seconds to die, which is why I think this movie is supposed to be a spoof parody. But then there's also moments where it feels like it's taking itself way too seriously, which makes me question, is it a parody or is it supposed to be taken seriously? I don't know.
When Buffy is at the dance, the students who are vampires start to attend the dance. They enter the dance floor, and Buffy's like, did you invite them? And this other girl, who is Buffy's friend, says, yes, I invited them. They're seniors, and it's the senior dance. So she invited the seniors to the senior dance, which means the vampires were invited in. But from what I could tell, vampires must be invited in by people and not other vampires. So Buffy ran out of the school earlier and killed Pee Wee Herman. Then she runs back into the high school dance, into the gymnasium, and while she's in the gymnasium, who shows up but the big Dark Lord, who busts through the wall, uninvited. He was not invited into the school, which means he shouldn't be there. So he is breaking the invitation rule.
Well, but Pee-wee already broke this rule earlier.
Well, he and Pee Wee broke the rule because they entered a different part of the school without being invited.
Yeah. Who invited them? Well, they're not school students. They're not staff.
How did they get invited? So finally, Buffy has her end of the movie battle against the Dark Lord. She kills the Dark Lord. She and Pike dance together while the rest of the students leave the gymnasium because the whole vampire thing. And there's a bunch of dead vampires all over the place, and that's the end of the movie. Well, almost. I forgot to mention, Buffy and Pike get on Pike's boner cycle.
They got on Pike's boner cycle and they ride away into the sunset.
It said boater cycle.
It's boater cycle. Is there a boater cycle on SpongeBob?
I think a boater cycle would probably just be one of those water skis.
It's a jet ski!
So Buffy and Pike get on Pike's motorcycle and ride off into the sunset. The end of movie.
Typically, I think when they do vampire movies and they have the fake teeth in, they record the lines in the moment so that their mouth lines up with the lines. And then I think they go into a booth and record the lines afterwards without the teeth in, to make them sound threatening. They did not do that in this movie, so the bad guy sounds goofy. Bad guy's like, Buffy, we were meant to be together, Buffy. And then Buffy's like, ew, you're gross. And then he's like, I'll kill you, you fish. I'm very threatening with my teeth in my mouth. Ooh, ouch, ouchie, ooh, I'm dead.
He just shuffled around it.
I'm back for 2 seconds. Ah! Ooh! Ouchie! Dead again.